When I was at Uncle George's workshop a couple weeks ago, I ran across a student who had the full length of a string wound onto their tuning peg. And so the tuning peg was just a wad of string wrapped around a whole bunch of times, and the student was complaining, it won't stay in tune. And so I realized that I really need to make a video on, and they requested that I make a video on how to install strings. And so I've already done a video on the slot headstock Bordessa that I have with the tie bridge. This one, another Bordessa, Big Island Colo, has a string-through bridge, and it also has the traditional peg tuners, which these go straight back. These are the planetary tuners, but it's the same idea if you have a kamaka or whatever where the tuners go back and then the peg or the knobs are on the side of the headstock. Same deal, same idea, but we'll give you some instruction on how to do it this way and see what we can get up to and talk about how to bind those strings so they don't slip and you don't end up with a million whines. Okay, so main thing about changing strings is you have a nice work surface. You're not gonna scratch things up. This ukulele is pretty warm and it's kind of like koa-ish sounding, even though it's the ulu wood. And so I had the uke logics are on here now. They've been great, but they're getting tired. It's time to change them out. Starting to get hard to tune, which is just what happens. That's how you notice, mostly for me, when I'm gonna change strings. They just stop tuning nicely. I thought I would put Worth on there just because they're a little bit brighter and I think it might complement the ulu. We'll give it a shot, see how it goes. I don't typically love these planetary tuners. They're not my super favorite as far as performing goes because they're kind of picky. But for installing strings, they're great because they turn around really fast and you can take all the slack out in almost no time. Uninstalling these, usually I would cut the strings, but because the pegs here are easy to undo just by hand, I'm gonna just leave the length of the string because that's gonna allow me to fish the bead back out of the ukulele because I'm gonna need the bead back for next time. You try and feed the string in, you just gotta find, there it is. Find how you can pull it out through the sound hole. And that little bead, in this case it's a little stainless bead. Took me a long time to find these and to get some that worked. You're just gonna pull the bead end of the string out and help the rest of it through. And you rescue the bead off of the old string. Set the old string aside. These beads were tricky to find. I wanted to get something that was a little bit, I don't know, maybe long for the world that would really last, like a stainless bead. I tried a whole bunch of different kinds and a bunch of different brands, and this is what I landed on. I think there's 2 different sizes in the ukulele because with the low G, you need a certain size hole to get that through, but then it's too big for the A string. So I think there's 2 different sizes. I can't remember, we'll find out. But what you don't want is for the hole of the bead to be sharp. When you have the hole, if the edges are sharp, if like the sphere of the bead comes straight up to the edge of the hole and it creates, you know, a corner that isn't rounded out, I've noticed that it will tend to cut the string. And I wasted a whole lot of strings using beads that had a sharp edge as I was experimenting with different beads. This one's really nice because it's kind of flat around the hole and it's kind of almost rounded out around the hole. But you want beads because otherwise the knot's going to be pulling into the back of the top. That's not so good, it'll wear things out eventually. Better to make the knot push up against the bead, and then the bead is a nice uniform surface that can push into the wood. You can see the fatigue on the string here. This is kind of a typical thing of fluorocarbon where the string will actually split. And if I was to play with this, I bet I could get it to separate into pieces. It happens where there's harsh angles or when it wraps around the peg head. Usually it doesn't do it right off the bat, but after a while, it will kind of fatigue and start to get, it's splitting is what it's doing. It's like the single piece of plastic has now turned into a bunch of fibers, which is why it's white. And usually it's not a problem, but it is more likely to break, which is another reason to, you know, move along with the strings when they start to split like this. I wanted to double check the different sizes of the beads so I could show these off. And as you can see, there is one that is different. That's for the A string. If you have a high G on your ukulele, you're probably gonna want 2 and 2 to get the right size holes. Bead size, the outer diameter does not matter. It's the inside, the hole size that matters, because your string has to go through and the bead has to be snug on the string. So there's basically 2 different hole sizes happening here. The 3 bigger stainless beads are fine for G, C, low G, C, and A. And then the glass green one is for the A string because it has a smaller hole. And once again, these are all nicely rounded around the hole so that there's no sharp edges that are going to cut the string. These Worth strings have upgraded to paper packaging all the way through, which is great. It's sad enough to have to throw away the strings themselves when you're done, but to just have compostable paper is really great. Kudos to Worth for making that change. Here's where it gets tricky. I have the new string, and what's gonna happen is I'm gonna take the string and I'm gonna feed it down through the top, through the string hole, and then I have to fish the end out through the hole. Okay, so I'm going down into the top. This is the A string I'm starting with here. Okay, and from here, I have to get that end through the sound hole. So this is kind of more of a pain than your normal tie bridge, because you have to do some fishing. Feel around and you find it. So now you have 2 sides of the ukulele string. One goes into the bridge, one comes out the sound hole. Okay, now the important thing is that as you're working on the side that's coming out of the sound hole, that you don't pull all the way through the one that's coming out of the bridge. This needs to stay visible and stay out. Okay, so on the side that's coming out of the sound hole, you're gonna feed your bead on, and then you're gonna tie a knot. I guess any old knot would work. I've been using a figure-8 knot with some success because that's just what I know, and I know that it's a good stopper for this kind of a thing. I believe it's what Chuck told me to use as well. I will get you a close-up of how the knot goes right as soon as I get this one done. And ideally, you want the knot to be as close to the end of the string as possible, because if this end of the string is buzzing around on the inside of your ukulele, hitting the inside of the body, gonna make noise. This is probably a little bit longer than it should be, but I'm okay with it. At the moment, I don't think it's gonna touch, but what I can do is clip a little bit off of the end. After I've clipped it, now the knot's a lot closer to the end of the string, which is not gonna buzz on things, okay? And the bead's already on the inside of the ukulele floating around in there. And you just pull it tight. I have some old cable here to illustrate how you tie the knots. So you make the loop, 2 sides together. You have the short end, long end is going into the sound hole. Short end is gonna go around, all the way around, and then while you're holding the knot, the hole in the knot open and flat, you're gonna go back through that one from the front. Okay, and then you just pull it tight, you get that 8, the figure-8 look. And the way I was taught to remember it is this is the trunk of the tree, this is a knot hole in the tree somewhere up the trunk, and the small end is the squirrel, and the squirrel runs around the tree, the knot stays flat, and then once he goes around the tree once, he goes into the knot hole to hide or to store his nut. Bang. Okay, and then so as you pull this into the body of the ukulele, the bead is gonna be on the string right here, and the stopper nut's gonna hold, and it's gonna pull tight. And then the bead is gonna go up on the inside of the body. Just so things are hopefully a little bit more visible, I'm going to jump to the low G string here. These strings are a little less clear than the worths, so hopefully it's easier to see, and they're also thicker in diameter. I believe, yep, this is a new Savarez KF95. And if you get the KF95A, they give you 2 meters. And 2 meters is enough for 3 ukulele strings, okay? So what I do is I have my ends, the ends of the low G, and I cut off a length that's a third. And to do this, I hold one end, and then I grab somewhere between the other end and where I know that the loop is gonna be on my string. So I end up with kind of 3 lengths. And then what you can do is try and even it out so that you have, on one side, you have 3 lengths, and on the other side you have 3 lengths. And then all I do is I just hold with my hand, and then I pinch where that loop was, and I know that that's where I can cut to have a third of the string. Okay, so once again, now that we have our string cut to length, you're gonna feed through the hole. Oh boy, it's a little tight. Through the hole until you can grab it out the sound hole. Okay, there we go. The bead goes on. Okay, it'll slide down. It's gonna disappear into the sound hole. Whoop, gone. And then here, we're gonna tie our figure 8 knot. Okay, so you make the loop. Squirrel chases around the trunk, and then he goes into his hidey hole. And this one, I've done a better job of tying right at the end. A lot of times you won't be able to snug it up until you pull the string into place, okay? And so what you wanna do is you wanna make sure that it feels like the bead is seated on the bridge, and then you can kind of tug and you'll feel the knot snug and everything will pull tight, okay? So now we have 2 strings attached at the bridge. This is one of the tricky parts, and then the next bit we're going to go up to the headstock, okay? And so that just feeds through. Always pull the string all the way through and tight. There's almost no situations with the ukulele, at least not doing it the way I'm gonna show you how to do, where you want to leave slack. Because the more slack you leave in the string, the more you have to wind onto the tuning peg. And the more you wind onto the tuning peg, the more wraps you're going to get. The more wraps there are, the more the string is gonna stretch, and the more tuning problems you're gonna have even down the road, because all of those wraps around there is potential to come slack. It's potential to get tighter if the humidity changes or the temperature changes, anything like that. So usually what you wanna do is you're gonna pull that string tight, and then we're going to make a knot here. And I have another piece of demo gear that I'll show you how to make the knot up here. Okay, so my same tired piece of cable, but now he's joined by a nice piece of PVC with a hole in it. This is going to stand in as our tuning peg. All right, so the tuning peg, you feed the string through, right? Pretty straightforward. This is the long end going down our ukulele. String goes through. Okay, now there's a lot of different ways you can do this. For a lot of years, I just turned here and I would go one time went, right, if upwards is upwards. One time would go over the short end and you keep wrapping around. Next time you go under and under. And away you went, and this would hold the string eventually. Because most of the new age tuning pegs, they have a scoop on both sides, right? It's tapered to where the hole is so that the string, once it seats in and it starts pulling on itself, it will actually start to squeeze that end together because everything wants to sit to the middle in the bottom of that divot. But you still have to pull things tight, and it's only going to snug once the string is starting to pull tight on the ukulele. You can lose a lot of, like this short end will still slip through as you're turning things with that style. So what I've graduated towards, and I've kind of learned this from having the slot headstock, because this is the no-brainer way to do it with the slot headstock, is you go through the tuning peg, and then the short end comes back, and depending on what way you're tightening the peg, it's going to come back under, and then you go up and back. So that when you start winding the tuning peg, if the tuning peg is going this way and the long end of the string is going this way, what it's going to do is as you turn around, that first time around, getting my PVC stuck on the towel, it's going to clamp and hold. So the long end, like even right here, it's holding. The long end is holding tight the short end. Okay, one more time. Short end comes around, and we can do it the other way, like assuming we're on the other opposite two strings on the other side of the ukulele, the tuning peg is going to turn the opposite way. So you go under, short end goes under the long end, and then up and back around. Okay, and so this is kind of a lot to hang on to, especially if you're not used to it. But basically, you just need to hold it up. The short end goes straight up, because then when you turn the tuning peg again, once again, the long end is holding the short end. And even if it comes back a little bit, this is what it'll end up looking like once you let things go, is that short end is just gonna go up and point upwards a little bit. But that long end is still wrapping around that very first thing as it comes out of the hole. It's gonna clamp on the short end. And from here, you're just pulling tightness. There's no slack, you're not pulling up slack. This is not gonna slip. It's gonna be very snug. And so I wanted to just demo this on the pipe first, kind of a big version, so you could see it. Because once we get to the clear worth strings, it's gonna be tricky to see. Okay, so string all the way tight. And then what you have to do is once you're on the ukulele, you have to think about which way the tuning peg is gonna turn. So in this case, I know that the peg is gonna turn this way, counterclockwise as we look at it from the top here. So as we do that, the short end of the string needs to be on this end of the long string as it comes around. Okay, once it comes, because we want it to be tucked under here as we turn clockwise, counterclockwise on this peg. And it's going to reverse once we get to these two pegs over here. But for now, what that means is we want to come around this way. Short end is coming around clockwise. If the peg turns counterclockwise, the short end is coming around clockwise to go under and up and then back the way it came. So that as we tighten things up, that is going to try and hold there. Okay, so as I tighten, I don't know if I can keep this all in the shot and focused at the same time and hold on to everything. As I tighten at this point now, the string is already starting to pull on the short end. Okay, and then as you go, once you're past that point, you can basically let go of it. And it's all gonna kind of stay there tight. And then you just go under, 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 all the way around. And the nice thing about this is the short end is always pointing up, so you don't have to fight it. You just tune to where you have to go. And you're pretty much golden. And another reason that I'm thinking that I did this, on this ukulele especially, is because the tuning pegs, these planetary pegs, are flat. There's no divot, there's no scoop in them to help pull things to the center. So you basically have to do this, otherwise they're just gonna slip and slip and slip. Okay, so now we have the A string hanging around, and that's gonna be the same thing. Especially with the smaller strings, they're the ones that are gonna require more wraps just because they're smaller and just the way the physics works. So what you wanna do is you really wanna get them as tight as possible. You really don't want any slack. So once again, I'm thinking about, okay, so this tuning peg is gonna turn clockwise because now we're on the opposite side. You have 2 and 2. In this case, we're turning the peg clockwise. So I want to have the small end on this right side of the string here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the small end counterclockwise, opposite that, scoop under, and then pull up and back. And as you do this, you can feed the string into place so that it's as tight as possible and then kind of hold up as you go. And then we're gonna tighten. Whoop, I'm a dummy. You're gonna go the other way. And right about there, we should be snug. It should be holding. Yep. And then you just need to be mindful that you're going below. Because of that, the string shouldn't pull through at this point. it should be locked and it should just be in place. Make sure everything is aligning correctly. I'm gonna go grab my phone so I can get a pitch on these strings. Oh, so my knot wasn't snug as I was tuning up the G, so I lost a bunch of progress. And if that loss of progress means that you've got to tighten the string way up on the peg, you might just want to start over, especially if you have these planetary tuners like this, because they're so easy to back off and start fresh from. That's what I'm going to do, because I don't want a bunch of winds on here. More winds equals just, it's more trouble than it's worth. Okay, so here we go. We're kind of back to where we started, starting from scratch. And see now that the knot is snug, I can see that where I first put my corner by tightening the peg, I've now pulled, I got another ½ inch or so just from snugging everything up that I can get out of it now. Okay, and so we just settled the A string in. It popped, and as you can see, we're already getting kind of a lot of wraps on the A string peg here. And so what I would like to do is have less wraps. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to back off now that the knot on the inside is tight. And this is only something that's really going to happen on these string-through bridges. It's easier to see and to manage with a tie bridge, but it's the kind of thing that it's just a little bit of a back and forth process with the string-through. So we're gonna do this again. And I can already tell I'm gonna be able to take up a lot more slack from the string. And usually a good policy to kind of keep your eyeballs away from the strings in case they decide to snap on you as you're going up. But now we're kind of up to pitch with this. We have the same amount of wraps as we did before, but we're actually pretty much up to pitch with those wraps. So I'm feeling more comfortable about that. Okay, so I'm just gonna blast through the rest of these. See if we can do a montage thing or whatever. String through. And if you can, you really want to try and seat that knot and the string so you don't have to redo up top here. That's probably just my inexperience with this style of string through. I've definitely not spent a whole lot of time with that, so I don't know the ins and outs of it. And that's probably just something that will come with time. As usual, you can clip off the loose ends, just leave a little bit. I really trust this knot to not be slipping, so I'm not too worried about leaving length there, but just a little bit to be on the safe side. Okay, so that's about it. Keep retuning this every couple hours for the next few days. Play it as much as I can to get everything settled in. This string-through bridge looks really great. It's a little bit more tricky to put the strings on. But for this ukulele, it's worth it because it sounds really great. Yeah, main thing, less is more. Less wraps is better. So if you can use that knot to hold your strings in place, you're gonna be a happier camper because things will stay in tune better for you. And yeah, you won't have to tune as much. Things should be more stable. That's about it. Catch you next time.